In this module, we're going to explore Ideo-Dynamic psychocellular healing. Ideo-Dynamic healing is mind-body healing, where you engage with non-conscious processes rather than communicating consciously. You're bypassing consciousness to evoke change and healing from within the individual, so that change happens from the inside out rather than in the style of most psychological therapies, which work by encouraging change from the outside in. Ideo-Dynamic healing is about using automatic non-conscious responses as the healing modality. So you have ideomotor, which are automatic non-conscious movements, idiosensory, which are automatic non-conscious sensations, ideocognition, which are automatic non-conscious thoughts, and idioaffective, which are automatic non-conscious feelings. During the beginning of this module, I'll give a little bit of background to healing, sharing about healing practices and the healer's role. Then I'll share about trance and healing and about inducing trance. Following this, I'll share about the mind-body environment connection and natural rhythms of life, before finally sharing about Ideo-Dynamic healing itself, about the different Ideo-Dynamic modalities and how they can be used to facilitate healing. Healing has been around for as long as humans have existed. Healing has taken many forms. Back in ancient times, people would heal with plant extracts. They would heal by rubbing on herbs and by using leaves. They'd heal by chanting. They would heal by using a whole variety of different techniques. So the actual art of healing has been around for probably as long as humans have existed, and to some extent or another, it may well have been around in other species as well. It's known, for example, that touch can be very healing, and even in other species like whales, dolphins, elephants, and all of the great apes, you see them touching each other, and that touch could be just for comfort, or it could be intentional, as if the animal somehow instinctively knows that touch has healing powers. A lot of recent research into psychoneuroimmunology and other mind-body areas have discovered that touch can actually stimulate genetic expression. By that I mean that it can actually turn certain genes on and off. It used to be thought that genes were very static and that your DNA was what it was and that it didn't change, whereas now it's known that the expression over certain genes does change and adapt to life events. So if someone touches you in a loving, kind manner, that stimulates different hormones in your body. It stimulates different chemical responses which filter down and have a knock-on effect with individual genes. As well as touch, sound is known to be very healing. Throughout history, people have used rhythms and drums and the sounds of nature like thunderstorms, waves, rain, the sound of sand moving in deserts, all as ways to stimulate healing. They've used chanting and singing, and in other animals you see this also. You see that animals use sound to convey messages, and at the same time, as well as conveying messages about danger or trying to attract a mate, they'll use sounds to comfort. And in a way we speak and the fact that we have language and words is almost like just an advanced form of what has been going on for millions of years in nature. So we can talk to somebody in a way that conveys love, we can talk to somebody in a way that conveys relaxation, and we can talk to people in these ways that allow healing to take place. If you talk to somebody and you help them to relax, and that person begins to relax, their stress levels begin to reduce, and as their stress levels reduce, their healing response increases. The way we speak has the power to turn the healing response on or off. Whereas if you talk to somebody very aggressively and abruptly, it immediately begins to cause a subtle stress response. And so whoever you are, even if you're someone who isn't seen as a threat, if you talk to somebody in that way, you begin to reduce the other person's ability to heal themselves. The healing arts themselves date back to about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, to the Egyptians, Mesopotamians, and other ancient civilizations. They would try and understand nature and the world around them. They would try to understand how things worked. Around that time, they began to create medicines. They began to realize that plants had healing properties. People had known about this long before that. Many tribes had known for generations about plants in their local area that had healing properties. But it was around 4,500 to 5,000 years ago when people began to have an intense curiosity about this and were actually beginning to record what they were discovering. As well as the healing power of plants, they were also beginning to focus more on the healing power of chanting and the healing power of trance. All ancient tribes and shamanistic tribes and practices all involve trance-inducing techniques for healing. All over the world, people were beginning to learn how to generate healing in others, and all of this is long before medical science was around. You had tribes out in Australia, America, Africa, and they all knew something about healing. They would often have a wise person. They would call them different names. Some would call them perhaps a shaman, others may call them a witch doctor, but that person held a key responsibility. They'd be the person that you would go to get healing. And the process of healing, wherever you went, was pretty similar. Firstly, there would be a belief that the person knows what they're doing and that they can actually heal you. There'd be a belief that if you did as you're asked and you followed along with the process and honestly took part in the process, the healing would take place. As in modern medicine, the healing didn't always work on everyone. The placebo effect played a large role in this. Over the years, placebo has developed a negative reputation for something that disrupts people's experiments, when in reality placebo is an individual's self-healing ability taking effect. It doesn't matter whether the positive effects are because the person believes that it's going to work or for some other reason. It's still that the person's own self-healing ability is healing them. So, for example, when placebo has been tested against antidepressants, the difference in success between antidepressants and placebos has been found to be so slight that it's generally assumed with many antidepressants that they're mainly just working as placebos. So the power of placebo can heal you of a wide range of psychological, emotional, and sometimes even physical problems. There have been cases of people being healed of cancer and of genetic diseases, and all they were on was placebo, so no one intentionally healed them. For example, there was the case of Dr. Albert Mason, who thought a patient had warts across his whole body. Dr. Mason had learned hypnosis and thought he can heal warts, and so he hypnotized the person and made the warts disappear, not realizing that he just got rid of an incurable genetic disorder, meaning that he had created change on a cellular level. In the 1990s, a man went to his doctor. He had throat cancer. He was put onto placebo for treatment. The man wasn't expected to respond well to the treatment and was given a few days to live, and his throat cancer went away. When he saw the news and saw that the medication that he had taken was found actually in trials to be ineffective, his throat cancer returned. He went to the doctor again, who put him on another placebo, telling him that this one was even stronger medication. His cancer disappeared again. Sometime later, he saw another news report saying the treatment definitely has been found to be ineffective, and following that, the patient died. So the power of placebo is a useful tool for the therapist or healer to know. People are often ashamed or scared to admit that they use placebo. People try to debunk therapies that use placebo by saying, oh, that's just using placebo. Whereas the way to look at it is, if that therapist is skilled enough to generate the placebo effect so that the client heals themselves rather than the therapist doing the healing, then that should be a valuable person to be out there. Obviously, it's important that people aren't forgoing recommended medical treatment. For example, you wouldn't want someone deciding not to have their cancer treatment because they're going to see that therapist who does healing or who evokes the placebo response. So you want the therapist to be honest with clients about what they do and how they do it, and that it is an adjunct to whatever their regular treatment is, not a replacement for their regular treatment.